one of my good buddies with me. He is a cartoonist. He is a satirist. He is an impressionist. He is an all-around funny and good guy. And he's kind of been making the rounds lately, been on a lot of big podcasts. He went and had some interesting debates with some figures on the Fresh and Fit podcast down in Miami. It was a pretty hectic, wild situation. There was some beef with a prison man, a bald prison man, fully clean shaven, I would add, prison man. And his name is MadeByJimBob. He joins me today to discuss the culture war, to discuss some religious and philosophical topics, to discuss his art, to discuss his idea of a satire. How you doing, Jimbob? I can't hear you. I can't hear him.
Oh, you can't hear me? Okay, hold on.
I can hear you now. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay, is that
let's
better?
talk about your journey. I think you had a journey out of kind of liberalism into reality, a real awakening, or you got really woke and not fake woke. So let's talk about that first. What's your background and how were you? You were in this California woke scene, weren't you?
Yeah. I was in the California default liberal scene for 15 years, little entertainment here and there, reality television. And then I started cartooning. And then, I had voted for Obama. Yeah, throw the tomatoes at me. And then I started critiquing Barack Obama. That was the beginning of my political, satirical cartoonist career. I basically... there's a famous video of him dropping the mic. He always did stuff like that. All I did is swap the mic with a bomb. And suddenly I realized the power of single image cartooning. And so from there, the more I pursued the truth, the further I went from liberalism and leftism. I stayed in the center for a little bit because that's our safety raft away from the sinking ship of the Democratic Party. And then eventually it sends you pretty far right. In my view, that's what happened with me. The more precise and the more rigorous I was with the truth, the further right I went.
Yeah, I thought the actions of Obama were so contrary to a lot of what he campaigned on. And I think, we've seen that with a lot of politicians. Pretty much every politician kind of compromises. But I think there was something wild with the Obama presidency where he just went like 95% in the opposite direction of everything that he campaigned. And it became really evident that he was kind of a banker candidate. Alex made the Obama deception. That was a big hit. So I think he did wake a lot of people up. Were you at that time questioning anything big like 9/11? Was it just the political domain, or did you start to go into more, quote, conspiratorial topics?
Oh, yeah. I eventually went full on conspiratorial, people saw what I was doing. A couple of closer friends at the time started asking me basic questions, like what temperature does steel melt at? And suddenly I was like, oh, there's more to this reality. And if I just look a little closer, maybe I'll get more content to make cartoons out of. And of course, you know how it is. Once you dip your toe in one conspiracy, it's pretty endless as far as where else you can go down that rabbit hole. By the way, which I don't think is healthy on its own, right? There's actually a disadvantage to going full truther. And we've seen that, too. It leads to all sorts of different heretical views. I think if you're a Christian and you lean too far toward. Okay.
You're exactly the problem that we see in America today. Okay. I mean, you've gone too far down the rabbit hole. You think my wife, Michael, is a man. She's a beautiful woman, obviously. Clear as day, it's a woman. Did you go that far down the rabbit hole, or is that too far?
No, I went that far. I mean, it started with something like 9/11, and then it was like, looking into NASA a little bit. Then more on the peripheral things like, does Mike have a lump that shouldn't be there, kind of stuff. But a lot of it's not.
Now you're at the level of like every Hollywood celebrity is female to male, male to female, right?
Right. You might as well just declare that so you're not surprised in the future. But you've seen it with yourself. You probably went down and then you see this whole other subculture of the truther world that really just is trying to find secret knowledge everywhere. That there's always something new to uncover. And I started to see that even though that's fun, That's not necessarily a great life to live. And so I even got some pushback from those people once I sort of turned another corner in my satire career.
So you started kind of getting a lot of traction right around the time of COVID. What were some of the memes that you did that you drew early on that went viral?
Yeah, one of the most viral ones was there was a picture of kids in a classroom with all the shielding around them and face masks and shields on their face. And I think it was a teacher or someone who said, like, homeschooling makes kids socially awkward or something like this. So there was plenty to draw from, whether it was Bill Gates or what schooling turned into, what the workplace turned into. I had a lot of them go very viral during that time. They were very useful. People translated them into all sorts of different languages, and they were just seen by everybody at that point. And so now, finally, I'm getting to the point where you could put a face to the crude images that you've seen.
Yeah, I remember one of the ones that stuck out to me that I first saw was your the sort of rainbow blasting through people. Yeah. I thought that was really good. Mm-hmm. Now, beyond a lot of the images that I know a lot of the audience has probably seen, but they don't know, who is behind that. They might not have seen your face as the guy who's doing a lot of those memes. And you kind of have a unique style, kind of an updated sort of Gary Larson-ish style to the way that you do stuff. But you also then kind of branch.
I want to show off something that we're all proud of. I got a browser here. This is Jay Dyer's much vaunted, much sought after Philosophy 101. Now, he just got this page up. We are just testing it out. You guys are some of the first people in the world to see it. I want to say, for my part, it's not Philosophy 101. I think this is a mistitling. I really think of it as like Philosophy Unleashed, because a Philosophy 101 course, they give you kind of some useless information that you can't make sense of. Jay actually lays out over 12 weeks, dozens and dozens of hours put into just the presentation of this, let alone the hundreds and thousands of hours of research that it takes to have a coherent evolution and history of the origins of philosophy, the uses of philosophy, the different ways to look at it over time, and how that has been brought about to what we have today, which is almost an absence of philosophy on the objective logic and reason side, and an overabundance of woke philosophy that is irrational and is made up day by day as people are like, I think we should bring racism back, and then here's a justification, and then it gets wokeified and spread out, and then all of a sudden you have a bunch of communist, socialist ideas where you become the property in action. You need to be able to stand your own ground. It helps to have a foundation in philosophy because it's a method to find truth. When you get down to it, philosophy is there because you love truth enough to go and learn how to find it because it's valuable. So if you're interested in things like that, there is the landing page. We'll link it up in the notes. It is a longer one, so we'll get a shorter URL for this. I'm sure Jay has a link on his page. I just wanted to show it off. Now you know it exists. You can go look for it and see why this is not your father's philosophy, right? So well done. I'm proud of everyone who helped to produce and edit the course. And of course, Jay did a flawless job in presenting the course over those 12 weeks. And he's a juggernaut. He's another guy, just like John Bush, in action all the time, doing something productive, like very little wasted time in his week. Those 168 hours are being harnessed very well.
Out into doing a lot of online debating. What I'd like to get into now is some of the topics of the culture war. You've done really well, I think, stepping into this domain, and you do really lengthy debates, oftentimes with atheists, not just atheists, but they seem to really gravitate towards your perspective. What were some of the things that, as you were making this journey, made you kind of start questioning your atheism and the materialism that you had?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, as culture changes, I used to follow all of these like sort of neocon, basically classical liberal outfits like the Daily Wire. And I always hear these slogans from Ben Shapiro. It'd be like, like politics is downstream from culture. And I always used to say those things, right? Oh, that's a great saying. That's a great platitude. I really like that. But then I started questioning, well, why does it stop there? What's culture downstream from, right? I started asking that question. And ultimately, if you ask that question, you get to an ethical position and you try to ground your ethical position, right? And so the natural follow from that position is that you start railing against atheism and secularism, because ultimately it doesn't care what culture's downstream from. It doesn't really have a foundation. And so I think attacking atheism in itself, secularism, which is informing our culture right now, attacking their foundations or the absence of, is a really it's a really effective tool, as you know yourself, that you just sweep away their entire it's a foundation of sand, isn't it? So when you expose that, suddenly people have access to rejecting atheism, rejecting secularism, because it's
so what you're saying is the town is not full of facts and logic. You don't believe in the facts and logic about Yaga.
Right.
Yeah, I think
what informs like politics is downstream from culture, and what's culture downstream from? Well, brute facts and logic. I mean, it just tells us what we should do. It's like, this is nonsense. And unfortunately, it's largely what our country is kind of founded on, is this sort of, this starting point where all these things are a given, and people like yourself have really shook me awake to going, no, don't grant anything. Don't grant any of that. This was a mistake to grant all of these starting assumptions, like, oh, we just have ethics, or we just have truth, and we just have logic. No, we don't grant that anymore. So yeah, that was a very viral one. That one went everywhere.
Yeah, that one was people were even using your memes at protests. That's pretty wild. So one thing that happens, I think, and I just did a live stream on this a couple of days ago on my YouTube channel. You guys can follow me there if you want, as well as following Jimbob over on YouTube. MadeByJimBob is his channel. You go to his website too, MadeByJimBob.com, and get his stickers, T-shirts, memes. Well, a lot of times people, when they sort of question things, they start coming out of materialism, atheism, the Dawkins, Dennett, Hitchens, Sam Harris kind of worldview. They then kind of think, well, maybe I should open myself up to, maybe Christianity, but what about all these other options? Maybe, New Age spirituality, yoga, DMT experiences, LSD, and so on. What would you say about that arena? Did you have a period where you went into that kind of stuff, or did you immediately start going into theism, or what was your experience there?
Oh, I think you broke up a little. I think the question was, did you go into sort of a new age sphere? Is that what you asked? Psychedelics and
yeah,
and all
a lot
stuff?
of people have that. When they first start questioning their materialism, maybe they experiment with DMT or LSD or mushrooms or something like that, and then they kind of maybe have a phase of new age yoga, DMT bro type of stuff. I'm just wondering, did you have that phase, or did you not really go in that domain?
The phase of trying out substances was earlier than that, and it was pretty short-lived as far as very extreme things. I was never impressed by any of it. What I did go into when I first started questioning stuff is I kind of led toward sort of meditation, no offense, Jay, but ponytail stuff. And I did Vipassana. I did a 10-day meditation retreat where you don't really eat or talk for 10 days all day. So I started looking at that in that direction, and ultimately I was looking for practice, right? Not just sort of knowledge of a spiritual realm, but how do you apply whatever you think is the truth into reality? And what you find is that a lot of these views, a lot of these things are just sort of incoherent as far as their practice is concerned. So
that's what I wanted to talk about in terms of that incoherence. A lot of people are turning to a lot of this new age stuff. They're turning to yoga, meditation, and all that. And not all meditation or whatever is necessarily wrong. But what do you think the major flaws and problems are for the philosophy of new age, the philosophy of, maybe something like what Russell Brand has recently talked about, and I cheer on the fact that Russell Brand is moving in that direction.
Well, I think a day away at once. I've been baptized in the name of Jesus.
That's great, but he also talks about it as
but Jesus is one way,
right? So Jesus is one path amongst many paths. Yeah. So, how would you critique this sort of New Age perspective?
Well, I look to what are the consequences of it, and usually it goes to a sort of a monism. Everything is one, which if that's the case, why'd you get into it in the first place? You should have already arrived at where you're trying to get to if it's all one, right?
Aren't you already there?
Yeah. Like as you would say on your stream, it's just teleological. It has no telos ultimately. You are already there. And then what you said about Russell Brand, which is also something both of us probably critiqued of Jordan Peterson, where they start to look at Christianity as some sort of heuristic or one tool in the tool belt, right? And this is turning religion or Christianity in this case into some sort of technology. And that's also going to fail you. Why? Because it reduces then to arbitrary goals in a utility or pragmatic view. And it never works out. Peterson, you hear it all the time. He's asked a pointed question and he says something like, well, it's like, I look at Christianity like the best possible character you can choose in Mortal Kombat. It's like, Christ is the highest mode of being in which you can apply to your arbitrary goals. And this is insufficient from our view, right? You know why? Because you can take any other view. You could be a really effective, salesman and perhaps tie it into paganism. The outcome-based view of theology is broken, right? We don't base our theology and what's good based on just outcomes, whether we like the outcome or we were really good at it, right? Ripped, rare. What is it? What is it, Jay? Ripped, rare, and
rare,
rich.
And, rich.
And
also, you gotta have a bad bitch.
Right. You got a bad bitch.
He had 3 R's, and then he adds a B, which doesn't fit with the 3.
Right. It doesn't. Yeah, the alliteration just falls apart. So yeah, that would be the problem. But mostly that first one, that monistic, everything's a giant machine kind of thing. We're all God, basically, remembering that we're God kind of view. These are incoherent. They basically remove the possibility, make it impossible for morality to exist, let alone truth. But morality is something a little more accessible to people when you're arguing against this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's one of the dangers of the obsession of the Jungian type of perspective.
Chad Mode is your ultimate natural pre-workout, designed to take your performance to the next level. Chad Mode is for natty beast alphas only. Whether you're hitting the gym, invading a favela, conquering a small village, gambling, burning the midnight oil, mogging on your coworkers, or getting banned from Facebook, Chad Mode gives you the competitive edge you need. It's as simple as mixing 1 or 2 scoops of our fine powder into water or juice, providing you with a delicious, energizing beverage featuring a burst of sweet, organic fruit flavor. Chad Mode will give you the extra edge you desperately crave. Chad Mode stands out from the crowd by excluding artificial flavors, preservatives, sweeteners, and dyes. We've even avoided so-called natural flavors, ensuring a clean and effective formula. Only soy boys and betas guzzle blue dye and sucralose, further tanking their already low testosterone levels. Chad Mode is made in America. Unlike your common TikTok peasant's pre-workout powder, it does not contain Chinese lab-made caffeine and artificial sweeteners that soy boys so often crave. Experience the pure goodness of Chad Mode with Blue Magic registered trademark organic blue spirulina extract, organic lemon, cherry, and organic maple crystals. Forget synthetic caffeine. Embrace the natural power of organic green coffee bean extract. Each dose of Chad Mode mirrors the caffeine kick of a cup and a half of coffee, delivering a surge of energy alongside essential vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and herbal extracts. Chad Mode will allow you to fire your boss and mog on anyone who opposes you. Chad Mode will give you a dominant and aggressive edge, like a lion hunting a gazelle where the gazelle is a TikTok gym zoomer macro guzzling sucralose on the daily, edging to TNF videos. Whether you're seeking a high-potency, junk-free pre-workout or a better way to kickstart your day, Chad Mode has you covered. It's not just for men. Chad Mode is a solution for anyone ready to conquer their fitness and life goals, dominate their coworkers, and aggressively gamble their life savings. Don't miss out. Secure your supply of Chad Mode on TikTok Shop with a limited-time massive discount. Elevate your workouts and supercharge your days. Chad Mode. Not for your average gym bro zoomer who guzzles synthetic blue dyes on the daily. Buy on the TikTok Shop now with a massive discount provided by TikTok for a very limited time. Buy now while this is still available. Chad Mode has been flying off the shelves because it's the first of its kind. Certified for alpha or sigma males only. Do not buy if you are a beta. We will refund your money.
I mean, I'm not saying there's no truth in archetypes or that there's no interesting elements in Jungian philosophy and symbology and analysis and all that, but it's kind of repackaged Plato. When you get really deep into Carl Jung, he's got these really bizarre essays where he basically says Charles Manson level philosophy that Jesus is Lucifer, Lucifer is Jesus, Antichrist is Christ. They're both flip sides of the same coin. It's very dark stuff, and I think that's kind of at the bottom of a lot of the the 60s counterculture ideology. It's not really hippy dippy love stuff. At the core of it is really kind of a satanic sort of Crowleyan agenda, if you really plumb into the depths of it. And that's ironic because that's kind of the same ideology that classical liberalism has, which I think is one of its main deficiencies. It's great to talk about liberty and free exercise of your speech and commerce and all that, but the problem is that negative liberty is a very limiting concept. It doesn't tell us anything about positive virtue ethics, what it means to be virtuous. It just kind of tells us, hey man, don't cramp my style, Mr. Statist. But we need more than that for a worldview. And what are some of the critiques you would make of just kind of a basic bitch libertarianism?
Well, I would say that it's descriptive, right? And then, it's missing the prescriptive. So this is kind of like a performative contradiction they're constantly in. A libertarian basically assumes, well, I'm just describing reality as it is, the natural world, right? And they start arguing why we ought to acknowledge rights or autonomy, and they're already in a prescription. They're already making a claim. Even the claim we ought to accurately describe reality is itself arguably an ethical position. And so once you ask them, well, what is it about liberty itself that is something we should strive for, right? It's like saying we should strive for efficiency. Well, efficiency is a description of how we get to point A and B, how effective we are, right? It's not a goal in itself. They sell liberty as a goal, and this is a big problem with the right side, at least the authorized right conservative ink space, is that they've really bitten into this shit sandwich called liberty above all things, right? And as we know, this is not sufficient. This doesn't tell us a direction. Like if you arrive at Burning Man and it's flat and there's nothing on the, what do they call it, the playa, that's liberty. You've already arrived, right? It doesn't tell us what we ought to build. It doesn't tell us how we ought to act. It just says, well, we're at liberty now. Great. Well, no, that's obviously not enough. You know why? Go walk in San Francisco. Tell me some bum dropping a deuce isn't liberty. Of course it's liberty. That's liberty. So
right.
That's my main critique over that. They don't have any, you know what it is? They have rights. They assume rights, but you ask them about their duties and they have a blank look in their eyes, don't they?
That's because you don't understand, Jimbob. There's an alien presence, and that's Hermes Trismegistus, okay? And he's down here doing rituals, okay, Jimbob? Do you understand that?
Okay.
I wanted to know what you think about, because this is getting really popular. Of course, that was probably one of the biggest interviews of the year was Cat Williams, both on Joe Rogan and on the Shay Shay podcast, talking about the kind of demonic elements in pop culture, especially the rap industry. And it turns out, guess what? Rap isn't actually a bunch of masculinity, and it's actually faking gay. There's a bunch of gay sex rituals, and Cat Williams kind of dropped all of this a few months ago. What do you think about pop culture and the demonic, the satanic? And is it all actually faking gay and compromising people? Kind of mini Epstein, Blackstein is basically what we had with Diddy.
Yeah, I don't know how much is like focused satanic ritual. I know that must exist. I mean, I've seen things when I was in Hollywood that had me question whether there was an actual spiritual realm going on there, which I'm now convinced. To what extent that is the case, or to what extent some of it is just sort of adopted culture itself, I'm not sure how to split the hairs there. But certainly there's an element of humiliation ritual honeypotting, blackmail industry where you basically break people down, right? And you get them to a sort of a blank slate, a blank canvas, and sort of rebuild them. I think they sell a lot of these people who are eager for fame and power on a lot of different ways in which they could maintain and gain that power and wealth and status. And they kind of just I think they just buy into the game of it. And maybe they minimize it by saying, oh, no, it's not really like that. We're just playing a game, guys. Well, obviously to us, it's not a game, that there's something demonic and spiritual about this. It's warfare. Whether they know it or not, it is spiritual warfare.
Yeah, I mean, why is it that they kind of across the board all promote the same, anti, family, they're anti-natalist. They all push the same, moral degeneracy. Why is it always the same Masonic and satanic imagery and symbolism in all of these videos? It never deviates. There's no, other way to be edgy. It's almost like the only way to be edgy is to be more degenerate. And then the next layer here's the Doja Cat video where basically she's baptized into the sort of Luciferian black goo from, evoking The Shining. And then she basically becomes demonically possessed. She's got an all-seeing eye on her head. And I know that this is just trying to be kind of edgy and shocking. But the point is that once everything gets really super degenerate, the only way to be edgy and shocking is to do the next level of degeneracy. And that's kind of the way evil works. Absolutely. I use an analogy. Like, let's say there's an art school and the teacher announces that they're going to do an art contest and it's going to be judged, and someone raises their hand and says, oh, great, what is the standard by which we're judged? And the teacher says there's no standard. So if there's no standard, right, for the good, for what's beautiful, for what you're striving for, like you said, the only thing you can do is be very crude, loud, disgusting, and you have to make up your own standard. And so being the loudest, being the most obnoxious, being the most provocative, it always ends in, feces, throw up, upside down stuff, like even early on, Picasso, you put the nose on the elbow, you put the eye on the shoulder, and you're basically just kind of like rearranging thing. It's like Dadaism or something like this, but in the music industry. And I think you're right. If there's no standard, the only way to be noticed is to be completely disgusting and push the boundaries, because there's no standard. So that's the standard. The standard is no standard, and so be loud and gross. Yeah, the only thing you can do is constantly push any boundary to rebel against any standard. But that's just a totally postmodern nihilistic, postmodern nihilistic, breaking of the boundaries. And it basically destroys, meaning it's actually a war on everything wholesome and good. This is the world. And we were just talking about kind of the demonic in society. One of the things that's overlooked is this idea, and I'd like to touch on this with you because we've covered this in podcasts that we've done, this idea of multiverse and this idea of simulation theory. I think they kind of relate to each other. They overlap in ways because these ideas are getting really popular. A lot of people are pushing this. David Icke called me out the other day saying that simulation theory is really the answer to what's going on. In fact, it's the Cheta Ori. It's the Cheta Ori that are mind controlling us. They're the archons that we need to break free from. Jimbob, what are some of the problems that you see in terms of adopting sim theory or even multiverse as a worldview? Well, I mean, right off the bat, when you say this is a simulation, bro, you have to question the claim itself, because how would you have this privileged position epistemically, fancy word for how would you have the knowledge that it was a simulation? Because you'd have to be outside of it to point to it. And so it's like saying, it's the same problem with like the multiverse. Like the moment you say there's another universe, well, you've just brought that new universe into this one. So now there's one again. And so the same problem with the simulation theory. Like who has this privileged vantage point to point to what is the simulation? And by the way, what is not the simulation? They wouldn't have an answer to this either. So there's a logical problem right there. It violates the law of identity. But other than that, it assumes that there's what we know about simulations is that there's a coder to simulations. What is being simulated? Well, this other thing that looks just like this. Well, is that a simulation? It's endless regress, essentially. It keeps pushing the question back, well, what before that? What before that?
So there are all a whole set of things that need to be true for the simulation theory to be true, and those things can't be the simulation, right?
Yeah, I think it's also really an ethical dilemma too, because if this reality is a simulation, there's nothing really inherently morally wrong with deleting people within the simulation, right? I mean, I'm not actually hurting anyone if I kill them, if I pillage and rape and loot and murder, because it's really just simulation. So if that's the case, why would it be wrong, or why would there be anything binding us ethically against doing those kinds of actions? It's no different than deleting my character in The Sims. There's no basis for ethics in this. And oftentimes we'll get sort of appeals from those people to kind of really generic ideas like, well, we got to be loved, bro. We got to love everybody. We got to be, at peace, man, or whatever. But there's no reason why love and peace aren't also part of the simulation and things that we can discard at will.
Yeah, the weird part about that, it's a bit ironic that if you were to be a part of some outfit or agency that spoke against, the Depop agenda and all these, nefarious activities from these NGOs and governments, the worst position is to take a simulation approach, which would be like, well, like you said, under a simulation view, why would it be wrong to do Depop, population control? I mean, there's nothing, like you said, unethical. It's basically software and hardware management. Like, it's no different than cleaning your hard drive in a sense, getting rid of some things that are on your desktop. They just happen to be people with families.
Do you see, we might think of simulation theory or even New Age stuff as kind of cultish. What about the rise of witchcraft? This is really popular amongst girls and teen girls. It's all over TikTok. Why do you think girls are being driven to that? And what are some of the major critiques that you would have of like witchcraft and these sort of more esoteric cults?
I would say to the first question, why is it, that women go toward that? That's a sort of a substitution for the absence of a church, which is probably a symptom of a weak man not taking the woman and guiding her to a church. They're going to find their own church. It's in the form of a coven. And I think what else is in play is the entertainment industry, as you've covered for many years. The influence of mainstream entertainment, TV shows, Charmed in this arena, Charmed, and all of these things, they're really geared toward the young female, right? Making witchcraft and dark magic sexy. You're gonna get attention from this. You're gonna get status if you're into these kind of practices, even if you don't even really believe in them, right? You're gonna get some sort of social status, and I think that's a problem. Like, there's a lot of places a woman could go, whether it's OnlyFans or witchcraft, that is really just a symptom of another broken thing that men are, in a sense, failing them at, is leading them out of this stuff. Because if you don't lead them out, they're going to just find their own church. They're going to make up their own theology. And now in a state of luxury, obviously, decadence and luxury, modernity has really made a fertile ground for people just picking up a hodge, mishmashed things, right? Mishmash, like Russell Brand. He has every conflicting tattoo of every symbol on his body. It's a feature of decadence, I think, and it really does affect women, right? Because there's no obligation to have children and be a mother. They have to pursue their own cool stuff, and now they're rewarded for it.
Exactly. In other words, I think what you're hitting on there is that this is really an outgrowth of feminism. And, we've had Rachel Wilson on here on the Fourth Hour. Jamie, my wife's, come on, and we've done some critiques of goddess worship and feminism. And that's promoted in the culture and the pop culture, I think, to socially engineer, particularly women. What are your thoughts on feminism? What are some of the critiques you would have there? I know it would overlap with what we just talked about, but I see really feminism as kind of the root of all that.
Yeah. My critique of feminism is that it just rests on a flawed assumption that's not descriptively true ever in reality, that men and women are equal. They're just not equal. Like, this game of like even rights and this concept that everyone's equal, if it's not from a Christian paradigm, which is to say we're all equal and that we're made in God's image, which points to our duties. Equal in the world is just descriptively false. The problem with feminism or egalitarianism right from the start is that if you were to say we ought maintain this, you're already using force. You're already assuming force is in play. Well, if force is in play, men are in play. Men are the predominant, deployers of force, right? So it's already a lie from the start. And so everything that's come from it, now we're seeing feminist men. Now we're seeing feminist approach to Christianity. Now we're seeing, all sorts of tweaks to feminism applied to different spheres of influence, political and non-political. And it's really based on a lie. If you ask them a simple question, who's going to enforce any of this? They point to all the men, right? And so, there's no such thing as egalitarianism.
Exactly. Do you remember when it came out that, one of the more prominent male feminists, Joss Whedon, who was, touting himself as this mega feminist, and then it came out that basically that was just his cloak to try to get laid, and all the women that he was trying to placate, they all just basically outed him and turned on him, and they Me Too'd him. So, yeah, I mean, it's just so it's a weird phenomenon to see, quote, male feminists. I want to get over to the experience that you recently had in the red pill domain, where you went and had a pretty epic, I guess you could say, debate with some guys on the stage there in Miami. I was there at that event as well, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then you went on the Fresh and Fit podcast and had a pretty interesting debate with a lot of ladies on there. But before we get to that, I want to talk about our upcoming event, which you will be with us in Las Vegas, June 22nd. It'll be me. It'll be Jamie Kennedy. We'll be doing some stand-up, open Q&A. Our buddy Isaac Weishaupt, who does a lot of podcasts on Hollywood, occult symbolism, and pop culture. You'll be doing a talk on Eyes Wide Shut. My wife Jamie will be doing a talk on Hollywood occultism. I will be doing a talk on espionage, blackmail, and the dark forces behind our power structure. That will be June 22nd in Las Vegas, and Jimbob will be there as well. So he'll be on the panel with me. We'll take some questions, and you can come meet Jimbob. Get your tickets over at the Eventbrite link on my Twitter, on my website, everywhere you'll see that. June 22nd in Las Vegas. Get your tickets there. It's a 6-hour event. It's going to be a lot of fun. They'll have a book signing. We're going to have meet and greet. We'll have all of that, and everybody knows our events are basically like parties. It's an infotainment party. You can bring your own alcohol. It's going to be a blast. Go get your tickets. We'll be right back with Made by Jim Bob on The Alex Jones Show. Welcome back to the 4th hour of The Alex Jones Show. I remind you to get your tickets to our event in Las Vegas there, as you see on the screen, June 22nd. And then Jim Bob will also be there. He is a addition that we've made to this event. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're talking about culture war. We're talking about spirituality. We're talking about the false philosophies and worldviews that seem to be duping so many people out there. Yet at the same time, the good news is we have a mass awakening. Many people are beginning to question their false views, beginning to think, hey, wait a minute, maybe God does exist. Maybe I need to seek out, the Bible, God's existence, Jesus, spirituality. What church do I go to, et cetera? Another domain that we haven't touched on that we kind of were dancing around is the red pill sphere. And the red pill is this male reaction, we could say a legitimate reaction from the guys' sphere against things like feminism, against things like, women being CEOs everywhere, women being every HR department, every manager is some overweight woman barking orders at you. Everywhere you go, every teacher is a woman. And so I'm not saying that women can't do certain jobs at times. Proverbs 31, I think, lays out a good pattern for, women can be involved in business and doing these kinds of things. But is this really the norm in society? We have this red pill reaction to it, which has some truth in it. But is there a kind of so what's missing in the red pill, Jimbob? Because you were just at a big event and you were up on stage, and that got a whole lot of views, a lot of attention, a lot of viral videos came out of that, clips. What's the main critique that you had of a lot of these red pill guys, and what was that debate about?
Yeah, my main critique is that there's an ethical position and there's no foundation for what the male's duty actually is. The red pill, admittedly, it's sort of their defense, very similar to libertarians, where they say, well, whoa, I'm not making any ought claims here. I would say from a Christian position, that is a key element of being a man. You don't just sit back and describe things accurately. You actually have a duty to push things in a certain direction. And I think that's ultimately missing. The funny thing about that event, and you probably were laughing a lot in the back there, Jay, is that someone like the Wes character, the bald yelly guy, he really is the sort of epitome. If you don't have any duties, and if the red pill is about high performance and only high performance, you're not going to get much a different caricature than that. I mean, I feel like that's almost a blessing that he showed up to represent what the epitome of this view actually produces, which is materialism. Collect things, teach other people how to collect things, buy stuff. Now, this is not a statement against buying things, having nice things. Fine. It's just that that's not a goal in itself. And so that's a massive missing. And ironically, they kind of, that whole sphere, ironically, kind of inhabits a sort of meninism. Like if there's feminism, I think there's a male version of feminism. And I think not everybody in the sphere, right, to be fair, it's just that in that red pill space, they end up kind of embodying a feminism for men.
And what would you say to somebody who says, well, but we got to do that, right? I mean, if the feminists are against us and women are taking over society, and why shouldn't we band together and create meninism and fight back against this?
Well, I would say that's on a false starting point that, I would just ask why? Toward what, right? Why? Like I asked the guy on the panel, why is it important that you can afford a Lamborghini watch, right? Why? Right? Toward what? And so I'd ask the same question, like, if it's an obligation for men to band together, right, from a Christian position and sort of, assume structure in society that's proper and good, at least there's a standard there to appeal to. There's an authority to appeal to. There's a way in which we can move forward with that. From this other view, toward what? Let's say we band together, Jay, and me and you, we just abandon our theology and we just start collecting, Bugattis, right? Did we beat the women? Right? Did we beat them? Like, let's say
isn't it? I mean, we often critique women of being materialistic, vain, caring about these ridiculous, overly priced brands of, stuff that's probably made in China, right? Isn't this just like a male version of the same type of consumerist collect brand name stuff?
That's right. It ends in men picking out leather purses. Like literally, not even like, I'm not even kidding. Like they have like fancy bags. Right? Yeah. Dude, we got to get some of those jeans. We got to try. We got to at least try.
In other words, it ends up in hedonism, and it's like, so there's no ethic here. There's no basis for virtue. It's just hedonism. I mean, isn't that the root of what we are critiquing oftentimes? Oh, women are hedonistic. Women are materialistic. Well, this is just like the exact same version of that. And it's not that it's wrong to have nice things, or it's wrong to try to be physically fit, or it's wrong to, be successful in the world. It's rather that you have to put these things in kind of their proper place. And if there's no God, if it's all just, attaining status for who and for what purpose, really no purpose to it other than what, for pleasure? I mean, so if the pleasure principle is all there is, then life is ultimately meaningless. And what's the point of even pursuing pleasure at all?
Right. And the irony there is if it ends up being hedonistic, then there's nothing wrong with the women pursuing, the same thing from that view. Freedom, liberty, doing whatever they want, OnlyFans. Guess what? Those chicks, quote, kill it. They're rich, rare, and ripped, right? They just happen to be in front of a camera, getting paid to do all sorts of horrific things, right? So that's one of the main things there that I've brought up to even some of the key leaders, let's say, in the red pill space, is that you push them back on their ethics. Like if there's no ethical view, if there's no ethical foundation, right? Why would you be mad at any particular outcome so long as it produced like wealth and an accumulation of assets? Why would it matter if it was degenerate or not from that view? It wouldn't. It wouldn't matter.
That's a great point, right? I mean, what if I'm doing degenerate acts, but I'm getting rich, ripped, and rare to get right? The degeneracy is like fueling my ripped, rich, and rare.
Right.
Couldn't I mean, what isn't Joss Whedon killing it? I mean, he might not be ripped, but he's rich and rare, but he's killing it with his feminism. So does that count? I mean, you see how silly this is, right? That's like, there's no standards to any of this. And if I'm a really successful feminist, then I'm doing well.
Also, if you took their standard of how to judge how well you're doing, it's very awkward and weird to try to apply it to the family. Like, what is your kid? Like the best, rare kid? Like you treat them like these features, like these objects on a shelf. My wife,
my infant is ripped, rich and rich.
Yeah. My cat is, like everything, like that's just a materialistic lens. You're viewing things as objects in the world, including your own family. That would be the contradiction as soon as you ask them about these things. That's why that guy could not deal with the questions Andrew and I were asking him, because they were meta questions about the game, not particulars about the game. And so they get, by the way, that's a great way to expose these people, is you ask them meaningful questions that force them out of their little myopic view of collecting items like Pokemon, right, and Lamborghinis. And you go, okay, what's ultimately here though? Like, what's the purpose? And they can't tell you the purpose. The purpose is to sell you another program, to yell at you until you're ripped, rich, and rare, right? And then you're back at square one, right? So.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to collect Garbage Pail Kids, and I thought I grew up, but it turns out, no, all I really needed to do was just keep collecting Garbage Pail Kids.
Right, yeah. You could have been on that panel if you had done that, Jay.
I wonder what would they have done if I brought my Garbage Pail Kids to the panel, and I'd be like, well, I collected these, and I have like the first edition. So does that make me, like, is that elite or anyway? So I want to know too about your experience later, because you guys went on a podcast then and debated with a lot of these ladies. What was that experience like?
I mean, the whole theme for me, Jay, was kind of like funny. It was like places I don't really belong, but maybe I belong there for that reason. Like the question from that we have to ask ourselves constantly is, are we obligated in a way or to go into these spaces that are, ultimately kind of gross, right? And is there any duty? Is there any good that we can do in that space? And I honestly think it's possible. I don't know how likely it is where it's fruitful and it actually impacts people, but it is certainly fun to go into the sort of alley space, the dark alley space, and see what can be done as far as confronting these terrible positions, these terrible behaviors, pushing back on these women who think it's totally fine, selling their bodies until their bodies are no longer in the shape they're in, and then what do they have, right? To what extent we're effective, I have no idea. But as far as the experience, I tried to make it fun. I tried to be joyful in battle. And ultimately it was surreal. I'm sure you could imagine, Jay, it's surreal to be in that environment, because there's a kind of there might be a performative contradiction on our part to be in the muck, but there's also, maybe not.
I think it's beneficial at times. So I want to remind everybody to go check out Made by Jimbo. I want to see a cartoon of a rich, rare baby with a bad bitch. That's your next cartoon. Everybody have a
baby with a six pack.